So, obviously, the big event this weekend, Super Bowl 58. Mark it down, Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. The matchup we've all been waiting for this whole year, Niners, Chiefs, the big one. Obviously, there's been a lot of conversation about this game for the last couple of weeks because it is the Super Bowl. But I'm I don't know what's happening with my camera over there, but
I was gonna say
I'll
I'm
just kind
trying to
of
get
like
rid of 1,000 different things. Just keep going.
but yeah, we will get into it. We'll get into in terms of what we're thinking in terms of predictions before the game, and I think we're going to kind of go into position by position breakdown, which teams have the edge. Um, but we'll get into that. Before we do, I'll just kind of throw it over to you, Simon. What are your kind of broad thoughts about the game, about the matchup, and about how you kind of think it'll go down?
Without giving too much away, because I think we want to wait till the later on
Yeah.
to give our predictions. I think it's going to be a really good one. I think that we've got. I mean, obviously it's the Super Bowl, but I think we have two really, really good teams. I don't think they. I think they're very different teams, which I think adds to like the stylistic matchup we're going to get to see. So I'm excited for it. I know that I've had a lot of different conversations. Personally, I feel like this is a story already written. I think this is one in my head at the very least that I think is already made to go a certain way, but who knows? Who knows? It's definitely not one that couldn't go the other way. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. And if you want, we can kind of get into we'll break down the game
Sure.
kind of piece by piece, and then we'll get into our predictions at the end. So if we want to start out with quarterback, I mean, this one's probably one
Yeah.
of the more obvious ones. But how do you think this? Why is Mahomes your pick as to who has the better quarterback in this
Golly gosh,
game?
I wonder. Well, Mahomes is gonna Mahomes. I think the one difference or the one real conversation, if we want to actually talk about this, is how much both quarterbacks actually needs to do for their team to win.
Yeah,
And I think if you're Patrick Mahomes, you need to go out there and kick ass. That is the conversation I've had with most people when talking about this game. Is Brock Purdy can go out there, and I'm definitely not one to call him a field jet like a just a game manager.
a game
So
manager.
yeah, I'm definitely not one to do that. I think he is a good quarterback, but he can win this game by just being a game manager. In this case, he can potentially win it by going out there, maybe throwing 250 yards max and handing it off to Christian McCaffrey in the end zone. Like that's all he's going to have to do to win it. If that becomes the case, Patrick Mahomes needs to go out there and have a career game. Maybe not a career game, but he needs to go out there and have the type of game that people will. He needs to be the MVP for this Chiefs team, I think, for them to win. At least in my opinion.
The one pushback I would have on that is not necessarily because I do think Mahomes has a little bit more to work against in terms of who he has around him on offense. But I almost think that the Chiefs' defense can win the game for them, even if Mahomes has a bad game. Because if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at it from a couple different angles. I'm looking at it from I recently rewatched the highlights of the last Super Bowl these two teams played, and I think we forget how bad Mahomes played in that first Super Bowl that he played in
Yeah.
against the Niners. And going into the fourth quarter, before he had those couple big drives to win the game, and that big play to Tyreek Hill, 3rd and 15. Before that, he was he had no touchdowns and two picks. And they still won the game because the Niners offense wasn't really able to keep up any momentum, and he turned it on in the fourth quarter for a couple drives. And I think that's almost kind of what we've been seeing all of this season from Kansas City. AFC Championship against the Ravens. He did what he needed to get the lead. And then what we've been seeing more from Mahomes is that he hasn't been making those mistakes. He hasn't been putting up as much, but he also hasn't been making those mistakes. So I think that's a big thing. Um, I think that, like in terms of, I do think he needs to do more considering that he has less around him, but I don't necessarily think he needs to have a career game for them to win. The other thing I would say about Purdy is the big thing I'm looking for from him in this game is can he eliminate some of the boneheaded mistakes that he's made? Because I think it's a very underrated storyline how badly he's played in the playoffs. Um, That Packers game was absolutely atrocious. He was terrible. He was god awful. He missed so many throws. He threw what should have been a pick six. If the Packers could have caught it, they wouldn't even be here, if that was the case. I think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback, as much as I hate to admit it, because my Brock Purdy hatred has just continued to grow as a Seahawks fan. But he has not been up to snuff in these playoffs. If a couple plays go a couple different ways where he made a mistake and he got bailed out, the Niners wouldn't even be here. That play I just talked about with the Packers, and then the play that got the Niners here against the Lions was the play where Kindle Vildor goes up, has a perfect play to make a pick. Purdy puts it right in his hands, and it goes right off his hands and into the hands of Brandon Ayuk. Those are bad throws from Brock Purdy, mistakes that are causing turnovers, and that's what he needs to eliminate if the Niners would be able to win those games, to win this game.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I think that even just looking at, like, I quickly pulled up a stat sheet just to kind of give myself an idea of what his performance has been like.
The stats don't tell the full story.
And they usually don't. But I still think it's important to take a peek at it. 2 touchdowns, 1 pick on the season, 260 yards per game, which is a lot higher than I thought it was, actually. But, I mean, it's not terrible, but again, I think you're totally right. I think he has a really good opportunity here to turn change what the conversation has been for the last little bit. He also has the opportunity to make it a lot more obvious. Because if he goes out there, plays a crap game, even if they win, people will be talking about that. Brock Purdy had a bad game. Is he really the quarterback of the future for this 49ers team? Which feels weird to say after the last 2 years. But it's certainly a conversation to have if he is really the weak link, right, on this team. Imagine how good you could be with a quarterback who isn't being carried. I'm saying what the conversation could turn to. I don't think it will, but
I don't think it will either, because I think even looking at, I think that was more of a conversation last time we had this matchup with Jimmy G. Like, he was very clearly being carried by the rest of his roster, and I don't think Purdy is that, but I do think Purdy is a lot more prone to mistakes than people think, because when people say game manager, it's like, oh, he doesn't make mistakes. No, he runs the system well, and he's really good at that, but he makes a ton of mistakes in moments where it matters. And this Chiefs defense can make you pay for that, because that's how they've been winning all year. They just shut down who's probably going to be named MVP tonight in Lamar Jackson. The Chiefs defense did. Held him to 10 points. So if I'm the 49ers offense, I'd be a little bit scared of that. But I don't know if you want to move into the running back matchups, running back rooms. I don't know if there's quite as much to talk about here.
Probably not.
We've got this one's another. We got CMC on the one end, and we got Isaiah Pacheco on the other.
And I think this explains it pretty well. I had a conversation earlier today with one of my colleagues, and we were talking. He placed a bet that is not going to hit at all. He put $4 on it to win him $1,104 or something, which should give you a pretty good idea. It was like an 11 legger. Like, it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I'm not a bettor by any means of the word. I do not do any sports betting. But he just read it out to me. And the one thing that he threw on there, that if you are betting on this Super Bowl and are not putting this on your parlay, or the Trick Play Sports Betting Podcast, if you do not have McCaffrey to score a touchdown, what are you doing?
Yeah,
and that is
yep.
And that is the one conversation. That is the one thing that I told him. He already knew it. He had it in there. But I think that pretty much speaks to what this matchup is. I think he might have, on a second one, I think he said he put in McCaffrey to score 3 touchdowns, which I had him going like, I don't know about that.
No, that's rough. Against that Chiefs defense, I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, that's a little high. But still, I think it really does show how good of a player McCaffrey has been and will continue to be, and I think will be in this Super Bowl. I think this offense is really going to get ran through him in this Super Bowl, and I don't think that's a controversial statement either. Well, you disappeared. But I think...
my video's gone.
Oh. Well, I'm talking to a black screen.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there you go. You're good. But... Anyway, I think on the other side, that's not to discredit credit Isaiah Pacheco. I think he's a very good running back, but he's not McCaffrey. And the Chiefs don't need him to be McCaffrey. I think he is exactly what the Chiefs have grabbed every single season when they need a running back. They just bring in somebody who is good enough. It's this, and we've seen
he's like a great downhill runner. I heard this phrase that I love on one of the podcasts I listen to around the NFL. They say Isaiah Pacheco runs like he's gonna bite people. He runs like he bites people, and that's kind of what it is. Like he's coming at you with some force, and it almost reminds me, maybe not exactly the same, but in style at least, like Chris Carson on the Seahawks. What he used to be like, and that kind of I think
that kind of like physical power back type style.
And I think that aspect of the game is a little bit under talked about.
Yep.
Because how did the Lions almost beat the Niners, and why did they fail in the second half? Because they hit on them with the run game in the first half. Some huge runs, especially there was like the 3rd and 18 where they ran for it and got it. The Niners' run defense was looking terrible. And if I'm the Chiefs, I think that's something you try to take advantage of, especially early on. If you can grind down that San Francisco defensive front, then I think you have a decent chance to win the game. Because Mahomes and his receivers, for as good as Mahomes is, his receivers have not been. So if you can rely on the run game, I think that'll be huge. As for San Francisco, I think you pretty much said it all with CMC. There's that. The one thing I would add would be watch out for people like Debo and people like Ayuk getting in the run game as well. Not to use that as too much of a transition point to talking about the receivers, but I do think that's a huge part of the Niners game. I think they used it a lot against Seattle, where it's like, we're going to use CMC until you stop him, and then once you stop CMC, we're going to start running Debo and Ayuk. And then we'll keep doing that until you can stop both of them. And then once you can stop both of them, you're already so far up in the box that we can just throw it up over your heads. That's kind of their game plan, along with the short little West Coast offense they run in the middle. But it is kind of like with the Niners, it's like you have to stop something, and you're going to have to leave something open with how many weapons they have and how many options they have. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Chiefs choose. But with that, we can move into talking about the receivers. Obviously, there's another one where I feel like I think if we go quarterback advantage Chiefs, running back advantage Niners, I think there's another big gap between the receiver groups.
And I mean, this has been. I mean, we pointed it out right off the jump as well. I don't know if we're gonna have time to go through every single group. We're gonna have to be a little bit picky.
You want to? Yeah, we can skip the trenches if we need be.
I think that will be the case. I think we will be skipping the trenches. But I think we can group, I mean, obviously group tight end, wide receiver, just for sake of time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I quickly pulled it up. I kind of wanted to start off with the Chiefs, because I think a big thing that I've heard a lot of people talk about is how good Rice has been so far for the Chiefs. He's almost kind of had a comeback. I don't know how good of a regular season he was having, but I know I wasn't hearing about him very much. But in the postseason, it's almost been the opposite. I think he's really, really just almost come out of nowhere and turned into a very, very reliable receiver for this Chiefs team. I mean, you even look at it on the stat sheet. His yards is comparable to Travis Kelce. And I mean, that has to say a lot, I think, about how good he's been for this team and how important that I think that is going to be for them. Do you disagree?
Yeah. I think that he is someone who is fine, and in this Chiefs receiving core, someone who is fine is a godsend. I think they've stepped it up, and I think Rice has played better than a lot. I mean, he's been the best receiver on this team, aside from, like, I guess Kelce, who has also had his moments where he has not looked very good. But I think this if the Chiefs are going to lose, it's going to be because of this, because this is how they've been losing all season, is because of their receivers either just not being there for Mahomes and not being open, or they're going to make some boneheaded play at the worst possible time where they have a drop and goes through their hands, gets intercepted, fourth down, they drop it, whatever it may be. That's how they've been losing all season. And it hasn't happened in the playoffs. Props to them. They've been doing much better in the playoffs, and I think Rice playing a lot better than he kind of standing out in the postseason has been a thing to watch. But I also think it's important to shout out guys like MVS, who was a big part of that losing effort in a lot of these games, where he dropped a big pass against the Eagles and had some mishaps. And I think I brought this up in the conference championships episode, where he has played, like he had that catch against the Ravens to convert that last first down and win the game on a very similar play. And it's just that they've been stepping up in the playoffs when they haven't otherwise been in the regular season. I think that'll be a big difference in the game. I don't think it's necessarily just about Rashee Rice, because I do think, like, you put him on any other team and he's wide receiver 3 or 4. I don't think he's like anything special. He's just the best receiver on that team other than Kelsey. And he does his job and doesn't fuck up that much, which is more than the Chiefs can be saying for a lot of the other players on their team. So I think
it's almost like you just want to, like you said, you just want a guy who's accountable. Like, you can, when you need it, when you, on third down, 3rd and 8, who are you going to throw to who isn't named Kelsey? That's what it's come down to for this Chiefs team. If Kelsey's covered by a good linebacker, which this 49ers team has plenty of, what are you going to do? And I think in this game, no matter what you think of Rashee Rice, he's probably going to be that guy, and it's going to be whether he steps up.
Yeah, pretty much.
But, I mean, on the other side of the thing, 49ers receiving core is really good.
Oh, yeah, I guess we haven't even talked about them. But it's what can you say?
What can you say? Like, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Ayuk. Let's move on.
I hope Kittle has a terrible game. I just hate him as a player. Absolutely terrible dog shit.
He's such
player. I don't like him.
He seems like such a nice dude.
He does not. I don't know. He is not a nice dude. We do not stand George Kittle. Absolutely terrible dog shit hair, dog shit everything. Little braggy bitch. I don't like him. I'm a Seahawks fan, if you couldn't tell.
No, you're just a very big hater, apparently, of all things George Kittle, just for fun.
I mean, I am too.
Okay, well, why don't we move to defense if we just want to group defense together?
You want to? We could do. Do you want to just group defense as a whole? We could also do, like, if we want to. Okay, yeah.
I think we group defense together. We are running out of time, I think, for this segment, as we do have a segment sort of set up. But which side do you want to start with? 49ers or Chiefs?
I think the Chiefs is the better defense. I'll start there.
Okay.
This is I think it's underrated how good this defense has been, because they've, like I said before, they've been what's winning the Chiefs games. And we saw it big time against the Ravens in the AFC Championship. I think the Bills were the team who had the most success against the Chiefs defense, but they were there when it the Chiefs defense was there when it matters. They've just been consistently able to slow down some of the best offenses in the league. And I'm looking at a guy like Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, and this is a guy who has so much Super Bowl experience as a defensive coordinator, not just on the Chiefs, but on those Giants teams who doubled up and beat the Patriots twice. So I know, I'm not to tip your hand too much, Simon, but I know you think this is a pretty difficult matchup for the Chiefs. Spagnuolo knows a lot about facing difficult matchups against offenses that seem kind of unstoppable, and he was able to scheme up something for them both times. Again, we saw it most recently with the Ravens on a couple weeks ago, and I think that's the key to this game. It is how it's the Shanahan versus Spagnuolo. I think that is a fantastic play calling matchup, because Kyle Shanahan, as much as I hate to admit it, he is a genius in terms of this kind of stuff. And
no,
I think Spagnuolo
is one of the best coaches I think we've seen in the last 5 years, and I don't think that's controversial at all. He has been very, very impressive. What he's been able to do with this 49ers team, with all the talent he might have, is very impressive. He coaches a very, very good team. And I think this will be interesting. I think this will be a really, really fun matchup. I don't know if you want to... I mean, I agree with you. Chiefs defense is probably better. And, no. I don't know if I have much more to add to that. don't know if you want to jump right into Super Bowl predictions, but
Do we want to talk about the Niners defense just for a minute
sure.
before we?
Yeah, sure. Actually, yeah.
What do you think about the Niners D? Like,
I mean, it's got the big stars, right? It's got all the
yeah,
big names you could really ask for. Like, you got Warner, you got Bosa, you've got all those guys. Like, their cornerback group has not been bad. It's been good enough. And I think that pretty much describes this group. They've got a lot of stars. They've got a lot of guys who can play when they're needed. It's just going to be whether they show up in the Super Bowl. That's all it's going to come down to. I know I don't know how much or how good I feel about the Chiefs O line going into this one, more just around the fact that they've got a lot of very, very good pass rushers coming downhill at Mahomes for as shifty as he is. I wonder if that's going to cause any issues for him. I think it'll be interesting. I think it's a pretty good matchup that we've got going here. I mean, like you said, Chiefs still have them outclassed, but that's not to say that the defense on the other side isn't almost just as skilled.
yeah, I would say so too. I would say there's a little bit more of an issue in terms of teams do have a blueprint on how to beat them. I think more than the Chiefs do, because if you can run the ball on this team, then you're probably going to win. And the Lions did that, and they went away from it in the second half. I think because they got scared and the Niners started getting momentum. They weren't able to keep up that lead as much, just because of how quickly that all turned out. But yeah, if you can run on this team, it's a huge advantage to you. I think other than Warner, I think their linebackers are a little bit shaky. I think their secondary is actually a little bit underrated in terms of the players I have out there. Charvarius Ward has been great. Not to say that, that I don't think you need that good of a secondary to beat the Chiefs receivers at this point. So I think the big matchup is like I said when we were talking about running backs, just on the ground. Can the Niners
Yeah.
defense hold up against them? And if the Niners defense is able to stop Pacheco and the offense can get going a little bit to where the Chiefs are having to play catch up, that's the big thing where I'm like, then the Chiefs are screwed. The Chiefs, I don't think, will be able to do like a come from behind win. I don't think they have that in them.
And
For the
that's what
Chiefs
had
to win,
that's what they had to do in the last time when they played the 49ers.
yes, yep. I don't think they have that in them this time. I just don't think they're built for that anymore. You don't have Tyreek Hill running downhill on a 3rd and 15 anymore. You just don't. You still got Mahomes, so I guess anything's possible. But I just don't
Yeah.
think they're quite built for that.
No, I don't disagree. I think when it comes down to it, like I said, when you're looking at it on 3rd down, or even 3rd and 15, like you said, who are you going to give it to if you're Mahomes? You can run around in the pocket and avoid sacks all you want. You can make the stupidest dimes, but if that ball is getting dropped, nobody cares. Like
Yeah.
I think, like you said, I think that's what it'll come down to. Because when the first Super Bowl was played between these two teams, Tyreek Hill was that guy on 3rd and 15. Sure, Travis Kelce can get that for you sometimes, but I think when Tyreek Hill was on this team, that was assured. He was exactly the guy that you want to put the ball in his hand in that spot. And you don't have that anymore. And we're just going to have to see what they do with it. We're going to have to see what they decide to do in that situation. Because I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to give your prediction for the Super Bowl as we kind of wrap things up?
Are we doing score as well?
Yep. Got to hit the score.
So I've kind of thought. I think I'm still gonna stand with what I went into this segment thinking and what I've told most people. Trying to come up with a score is tough for me. I think it's gonna be close. I think it's gonna be very, very close. I don't think either team is really gonna run away with it. I think it'll just come down to the last minute. I have a funny feeling it's gonna end up in one person's hand, and when you put the ball in that guy's hand with 2 minutes on the clock, shit happens. I've got the Chiefs to win it. And
Really? Wow.
think
I thought you had the Niners to win.
no, I don't have Niners.
Wow.
I have
Wow.
the Chiefs. Maybe it's out of optimism that I don't want the Niners to win it, but I do have the Chiefs. I will say 31 to 24. We'll go with that.
Okay. I'm going to what I've been telling people, because a bunch of people have asked me for my opinion on the Super Bowl, and normally I'll have a pretty clear answer for them. And this year I haven't. I think it's just because I'm looking around and I'm thinking a Niners Super Bowl win would make me go insane and make me lose it a little bit. And it would just be like the straw on the camel's back for breaking my overall positive well-being. It would crumble to the ground. So I don't want to speak it into existence. And I think there's a very real possibility that the Chiefs win. I think if their defense shows up to play, and if I think they can avoid falling behind early, I think the Chiefs absolutely have a chance to win. Taking advantage of Brock Purdy's mistakes, absolutely. But I think the big thing that I'm worried about is if this Niners team, which I think they're fantastic on opening drives, I think if they get the ball to start the game, they march down there, score a touchdown, then the Chiefs aren't able to immediately answer. Like if this game turns into a shootout, the Chiefs aren't winning. And I'm a little bit scared of that.
That's interesting.
So in my head, I've been telling people all week that I think the Chiefs will win. But as I've gone through a period of self-reflection, I think that is more of what I want to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not that I think it can't, but I think if I was really to be honest with myself and say, like, what do I actually think is going to happen here, I don't think they can beat the Niners at this point.
Wow.
I think the Niners will start hot, and I think Brock Purdy will make some mistakes. He'll keep them in the game, but I'm thinking 27-20 for the Niners. I just don't think if the Niners get ahead that the Chiefs have the kind of team to catch up.
For Patrick Mahomes in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and the other thing is that this prediction does for me is that all year people have been betting against the Chiefs, and then the Chiefs have proved them wrong.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong. I'm a hater. Prove me wrong.
Yeah. I don't know. This is one of those years where it feels like when you think back on a player's legacy, right? Like when you, for example, you think of Tom Brady, you can go through all the stuff, like the coming back from the Atlanta Falcons, like giant lead and like all of that stuff. This is the year where Patrick Mahomes is going into it. The last time he went into it with very obviously the worst team, he got his ass kicked by Tom Brady. This year he's going into it with very obviously the worst team, and I think this is a legacy game for Patrick Mahomes. And I think this is the type of game where he has the opportunity here to go out there and have the type of game that people will talk about for the next 100 years. And I have a feeling like it'll happen. I just think this is the type of thing where the only thing standing between Patrick Mahomes and a legacy-defining game is Brock Purdy and the best football team. Like, just, I don't know. It feels like one of those things where I think Patrick Mahomes might have the chance to go out there and throw like 4 touchdowns and have like the stupidest game ever. It feels like one of those kind of Super Bowls.
Yeah, I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I just don't see it
that could be optimism. That could be optimism. Who knows? But
as much as I am going to be disgusted by seeing George fucking Kittle with a Super Bowl ring, I think it's probably what's going to happen, and that makes me more depressed than anything. If I'm not back at the podcast next week, it's because I'm in a catatonic state of depression and haven't left my couch since Super Bowl Sunday.
Well, that makes it interesting for sure. We're both on either side. I mean, it's not. I don't know. I don't want to say you're cheering for the 49ers because I know that isn't true. But
I'm almost
who do
making
you think's
this
gonna
prediction.
win?
Yeah, I'm almost.
You're making the prediction, hoping you're wrong, basically.
Yeah, I'm covering both my bases. If the Niners win, I can at least say that I was right. And if the Chiefs win, I can be happy and like have joy in my life.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
There you go. At least you can come back on the podcast sobbing, just like I knew it.
Yeah, pretty much.
There you go. All right. Well, next segment.